So connected thinking. So the goal of that workshop was to be able to describe what connected thinking is, to be able to practice connected thinking and gain insights into different areas of the connected space and anything else that they wanted to cover. So the agenda, really quick, was connected thinking overview, which I'll go through, and we will not do the user exercise, industry exercise, or technology exercise, but I could kind of tell you guys what I made them do so you guys have a better sense of it and what the pitch was as well at the end of that workshop. So I'm not sure if all of you guys are familiar with design thinking as a principle, but design thinking was first taught by Rolf Fast in Stanford in 1983. It was a human-centered design process, very much looking at products and industrial design versus what we are looking at today as connected thinking. It was adopted by Frog, IDEO, and other kind of product design firm, not really digital design. So this is kind of a high-level overview. I'll dive into it a little bit more. And the issue with design thinking is that it's very user-centric, it's very human-centered, and really doesn't account for technology as a real-world force and what it wants and what its desires and needs are, and which is kind of a weird thing to think of technology as an entity, but that is kind of how we think about it. Like, technology definitely has a direction that it wants to go. And then from the industry, we're looking at that as a real-world force as well, with its own wants, with its own needs, desires, and with the direction that it wants to go. So with design thinking, you have the user, and you have the product and service, and in between there, you have what everybody else does. And we do it here. It's the 5 steps: discover, define, design, prototype, repeat, deliver. Every firm will do this exact steps. Wherever you go, everybody has the same exact steps. They call it different things, but pretty much the same thing. So again, taught by Rolf. And it's perfect for things like the Sony Walkman. So Sony Walkman is a beautiful product. If you guys, God, some of you guys are not even old enough to own a Sony Walkman.
Yeah, I'm not old enough.
You're definitely not old enough, Kevin. Sony Walkman, it's like an older person's version of the iPod. Anyways, did what it did really well, play music. It was a beautiful design, and I loved my Sony Walkman. It was actually my brother's Sony Walkman, and but I loved it. I stole it. So did that really well, and that is considered kind of design thinking and really great practice. However, with today's world, there's so much more happening than just that one product. There's the cloud infrastructure, there's potential like online shopping cart. The ecosystem is much bigger than where that is at. So that's when I worked with several members of this team, actually, like I think Nikki, Simon, Quinn, and we looked at our process. So this is a part that I didn't talk about, but we looked at our process and backwards engineered how our process is different than other firms, and why most of our clients come to us through referral, by the way. So we are doing a lot of biz dev, but most of them are biz dev follow-ups from warm clients who come to us because either I've known them or somebody here has known them, or they have referred us. So HTC, for example, referred us to T-Mobile. T-Mobile referred us to XYZ, and so on and so forth. And so we have a really great track record here because we deliver really high quality product, and you guys should be proud of that. And so in my head I was like, okay, what is our secret sauce? Why is it that clients like us? They like to work with us, they refer us. And so working over, I think, a period of 3 months, we kind of backwards engineered connected thinking and came up with, okay, this is kind of how we approach things differently. So you look at the users, like everyone else, but we look at the industry and we look at technology, and we do this all in kind of a parallel effort. So we weave that into the user process as well. So we're not just focusing on users. And so we're going to be doing this even more now that we have the design strategy team, we have the dev team. We're going to be even more focused and looking on this on a parallel effort, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into what I mean by this. So Napster is something that I'm going to bring up here, because Napster was really a product that was disruptive to the entire recording industry. It was something that the recording industry, if they had worked with us way back when, may have been able to, maybe not, maybe been able to have some foresight into stalling their demise in some sense. So Napster essentially made music really easy to share, easy to control, and it was free, and the users loved it. Oops, hit the wrong key. And from the technology perspective, technology really liked it because it was an open format, it was faster, and it gave, it had kind of unlimited storage because it was peer-to-peer sharing. Industry, though, really didn't care. They thought they could continue raking it in because, and I'll show you a chart about this, in 1999 they had the highest sales posted. So they ignored Napster, they tried to shut it down. So I will talk about Napster's impact on digital and how that applies to connected thinking, and I want you guys to watch this video. Some of you guys have seen it, but shoot. I don't know if you guys can all hear that.
You're talking about revolutionizing the way we use computers.
The fact that you could kind of share emotion over the internet, something so important to you, you could just trade so freely. That's what was so profoundly different about the explosion of the internet, was that it was one network. So suddenly you could be connected to everyone.
I released an early beta version of the Napster software during the summer, and it spread quickly by word of mouth. It hasn't stopped growing since. Just, wanted to create a way to meet people through music. Music will be ubiquitous, and we believe, you'll be able to get it on your cell phone. You'll be able to get it on whatever the device of the future is.
We knew it was a long way off from all the music being available digitally. And then there it was.
I just felt like this was one of the great moments in human history.
This is a company that is building a business. They've got venture capital money.
My response to them, I couldn't type fast enough, was, don't take the money. You don't have a business.
They're building a business by facilitating the stealing of artist music.
We saw the clicks of the numbers, and that's what they were downloading at that particular time. That was shocking.
The music business is a great example of just complacency being total death sentence.
I thought that the way that people got music for the last 50 years worked.
The record companies are not adjusting to technology.
Major music industries, entire floors were turning their lights off.
Bootleg proof, you dig? That's great, isn't it?
Metallica was coming to our office.
What we're merely doing is giving Napster the information that they thought that we couldn't get them.
Napster is stealing from us, straight up, and I'm going to fight them to the death.
As last fall semester wore on, hundreds quickly turned to millions, with the program spreading across college campuses like wildfire.
Nearly 60 million people use the site to swap music files from each other's computers for free.
We literally went from being high school kids leading normal mundane lives to 12 months later bringing one of the largest U.S. industries to its knees and basically fighting what is the largest corporate lawsuit in the history of the world.
Lawyers representing Napster and the recording industry squared off before a 3-judge panel.
What is it capable of being used for? We are not trying to stop the internet, certainly.
The final word on Napster will eventually end up coming from the U.S. Supreme Court.
Music downloaders, beware. The recording industry is suing computer users.
What they've done is to turn an entire generation of kids into electronic Hezbollah.
A bomb went off, and nobody knew what the hell was happening.
It has changed everything.
It's obviously so big, it's out of their control.
The cat wasn't going back in the bag.
Now the people have a choice.
There's no stopping it. This revolution is already taken place.
So I bring Napster up because it's a good example of when an industry or technology does not practice connected thinking. So it's a very good example of looking at connected thinking in a very macro view where there's several ways you could think of connected thinking. The macro view is you have the industry, you have the users, you have the technology. And then you have a micro view of connected thinking, which is very much about the product itself, right? But at the macro view, Napster, the recording industry, the technology, none of it worked together. I mean, there was a full-on, battle to the death here. And so this is actually the predicted sales chart from the recording industry, so album sales per person. So when Napster started, so they were posting some really crazy numbers, and they were predicting growth along this chart. after Napster started, this was the actual sales, and the recording industry recovered in 2013. So, I mean, over a dozen years, because instead of going along with it or trying to figure out a solution that would take that technology and expand on the technology and market it and actually make money, they decided to just fight it the whole way. So, because of that, 13 years later, they still are having some interesting issues, but a connected music platform is something kind of that we're sort of seeing today. There's still a lot of issues in that industry, but the industry has figured out, okay, maybe there's an advertising premium model. From the technology side, we have some better bandwidth, cloud storage. From the user side, the ownership is now shifting to, instead of owning music on your tape that gets played by Sony Walkman or even on desktops in the Napster program, just access, just simple access, right? So you got Spotify, Pandora, Google Music, Amazon MP3s, and iTunes that you can do streaming music over versus having to actually own it. So this is where the model completely shifted from, we're going to fight them to the death and this is never going to happen, we're going to try to squash them. And I think that is the hubris of that industry, because they were at the top of their field. So didn't practice connected thinking. Recording industry had just no clue of what they wanted to do. So that is a very macro view. The very micro view of connected thinking is now kind of taking all the products, right, and thinking about how things are connected to each other, speaks to each other, to other products, and then also to the cloud. And so I'm going to try to talk about both, but it's a lot to take in 30 minutes. So, but bottom line, why connected thinking is better than human-centered, user-centric design thinking alone is that companies that have practiced it really well, such as Apple, and you guys have all seen this chart, really understood what it means to have the technology plus the financials, the financing capabilities, the supply side, and all the user behavior changes impact their product. So I would say Apple's probably, and in retrospect, one of the better practitioners of connected thinking, because they did not just say, Steve Jobs didn't just go away one night and dream up, the iPhone. There were definite steps and progressions of how that was going to happen. So this is a zoomed-in chart. If you guys haven't looked at it closely, you can see all the steps of kind of how technology evolves to get to the iPhone. So even from the cellular technology to the battery technology to cell technology to screen technology to the radio technology, if you look at that chart closely, it's an evolutionary step. So you can't get to a light bulb without having the technology of the filament and the glass and electricity, right? Once you have those three components, there's this kind of natural cohesion of those three technologies wanting to kind of work together to create, ta-da, the light bulb, right? So that's what I mean by kind of direction of what technology wants. When there's these pieces out there, and this is where I try to practice with you guys individually, with some of you guys, is like, I want you guys to be able to like be predictors in some sense, where you could actually see the future by seeing all these different components that might be out there in the market today and say, if I mash this up from a technical perspective, what do I get, right? And that's kind of how technology evolves. And this is where, if you read Kevin Kelly's book, What Technology Wants, there's actually an interesting study when you look at patents. So there's there's like a patent rush to the patent office where several people come up with the same idea at the exact same time. And so the question is like, why do these people come up with the same idea at the exact same time and go do a patent rush? It's not so much that there's this neural network and our subconscious are reading each other's subconscious minds, whatever. It's because they all kind of saw the next logical step of a particular technology, right? And that's what really happens in the patent rush. And so that's kind of what I ask of you guys is that, and I think we do this a lot, we share on Skype, we share a lot of information with each other about, hey, check this out, check this out, check this out. And we can kind of see this kind of next logical step of like, hey, if you combine this and this, you get the light bulb. Cool. So that's kind of what technology wants, and what does it really want as fundamental? It really wants to evolve with us. So there are technology out there that has died, right? I can't think of one right now, but it doesn't actually die. I mean, the technology doesn't ever go away. It just becomes dormant, right? But it doesn't get used. So I guess you could say that cassette tape is a technology that is no longer used. It's dormant because it got replaced by digital. So to succeed at that, it needs our attention, so our focus, our data, and it needs fast access to us. So those are the things that technology really wants. So if you think about writing or language, for example, going from cuneiform that was like pounded into rock, right? That was a way of transmitting thought, but it's also transmitting language across to other people and the practice of language. But for people, that wasn't fast enough. And for the technology itself, it wasn't fast enough, so you got to paper or papyrus, you get to email, now we're at tweets, right? So if you think about just how our language has evolved into very short-term bursts of information, you could see that how language from like, and I forget who I made do this. Was it you, Nikki? Did I make you do this exercise? Yeah, where it's like map or a path of on language, and yeah, we're at the tweet world, so we'll see what happens next. Be probably mind to mind, transfer. So, as I was mentioning, there are technologies that go dormant because of another technology comes in and intrudes upon the other technology. So there are constantly tech battles that we are watching or subconsciously watching. So what are some of the tech battles today? Very obvious one for most of us is the one between the phone, automotive, and the phone and automotive world. So phones versus cars. So for myself, I'm a Gen Xer, and for me, I lived in LA. My kind of entertainment growing up was driving, getting away, doing the cruising on Sunset Boulevard, and this was most of my generation's entertainment. This is our entertainment value. We really had a very strong car culture. America, the US, has a very strong car culture, but we are watching that diminish over time, and all the automotive industry is just freaked out right now because the stats around this is kind of crazy. So Gen Xers, when I turned 16, I was there. I was at the DMV getting my driver's license test. I had already been driving since I was 14. Millennials, when they turned 16, only 13% of them went out and got their driver's license. So what happened? Like, why that steep drop? So one of the very simple explanations is that internet happened, phones happened, and really what we're looking at is that our focus or shift, our entertainment has gone from driving in cars to actually being on the phone or on computer. Like, you no longer have to go to places to find entertainment. Like, a lot of us are fine just hanging out at home and Skyping with each other. So that kind of led to this shift in user behavior. So now we're watching user behavior and trends shifting. And so because of that, Google also is an interesting one. Google does not want your eyeballs, like Sergey and Larry, do not want your eyeballs on the road, looking at the road, looking at your steering wheel. They want your eyeballs on their phones, on your Chrome browser. They want to keep your focus as much as possible on their product, right? So that's kind of why they're looking at the autonomous vehicles. So they have a huge lobbying effort. I think 2 years ago they spent $9 million lobbying Washington in just like the first half of that year. So I have no idea what their lobbying effort is right now to get autonomous vehicles on the road. But if you think about why in the world would Google care about cars and automotive, is because they understand technology as kind of what it needs for technology to succeed. Again, is our attention, right? Access to us and our data. So because they understand that, they're like, oh, that's a good one. People spend 2 hours in their car in certain cities. we'll go after that, make sure those 2 hours are locked into our system. So this is where what happens with connected thinking. One of the things I talk about is there are times when technology will depart an industry and join up with a different industry. So this is where 4 wheels on a chassis is actually leaving the automotive industry and going and joining up with the internet industry because, hey, the 4 wheel on a chassis, that technology wants to survive, and the way it knows to survive is to join up forces with a different industry. So this is actually kind of a fascinating shift in time right now. So winner is right now phone. Overall, one of the conversations I have with automotive groups a lot, and BMW, this is recorded, so BMW told us they know they can no longer make cars. And I was like, wow, I didn't know you guys actually, because we told the same thing to Hyundai. And they wouldn't believe us. So 2 years ago, we had a session with this major car manufacturer out of Korea. And they said, oh, when do you think this autonomous vehicle is going to happen? And when do you think all of this connected car stuff is going to happen? We're like, 3 years. They asked Quinn. Quinn's like, 3 years. And the executives, these are like really high C-level executives. They had just gone and seen Google, Twitter, University of Berkeley, Disney, and they're meeting with this little design firm. And he's like, yeah. And Quinn's like, well, when do you think it's going to happen? Won't happen for at least 7 years. Again, this was like a year ago, I think. And then Google this year announced what they're doing. Tesla announced what they're doing with autonomous vehicles. So I think Quinn feels very vindicated in that conversation. So what is it that industry wants? So I'm going to take you guys in a completely different direction here. Industry at the heart of it wants to grow and prosper as well, right? So this is where I'm going to go a little bit esoteric on you, but I want you guys to understand this. I don't know if anyone is an economic major or anybody studied economics.
I don't know Nikolai Kondratiev.
Okay. Nikolai Kondratiev, he died in the gulags, was killed by the Stalin regime, because he was hired at this point by the Stalin regime because he was brought on to prove that capitalist society was screwed at this point, right? And he was essentially brought in, he's an economist, and he was told by the Stalin regime, like, see, capitalism doesn't work. Socialism is the way to go. And so what he did was he looked backwards in time and he realized, actually, that's not necessarily true. There's actually these waves, these K waves they're called now. And so this is an economic theory. So his perspective was that any time you see these dips, and we're coming out of one now, it's a way for, in some ways, the industry as well as technology to go through what is called a creative destruction. So creative destruction meaning that it's a way to clear out all these old industry business models or old technologies or old thought processes, right? So we naturally need to do kind of like, it's like spring cleaning, right? It's the best way to put it is like spring cleaning. You have to clean house to be able to build something new again and something better. And so what's interesting to me, unfortunately for him, was that when he showed the Stalin regime this, they threw him in the gulag and he died in the gulags because he wasn't proving out socialism, he was actually proving out capitalism. But truly what's interesting to me is that because we're coming through this financial crisis, we are at that creative destruction moment and we just passed it. And so we, and I think as a company, are watching some really fascinating things changing right now in the automotive industry, in healthcare, in kind of the big data, quantified data, so user trend behaviors, access versus ownership. There's so many new business models and so much new technology that's happening and shifting, and all the old industry players are just either really scared, like the automotive groups, or the insurance groups are like party mode. So this is where we have a tremendous opportunity right now to be able to kind of define that future. So how do you prepare for that next K wave? So this is where are naturally all inclined this way, but to be able to understand trends, right, I think is a key thing for us to be able to understand and constantly keep on top of user behavior trends, as well as technology trends. So the difference between, well, you guys all know access versus ownership, big data and little data. If you guys don't know it, please ask. 3D print anything, organs, clothes, houses, privacy issues. I'll go into this a little bit more. And so that's kind of overall connected thinking. And the exercise that I made people do in my workshop was identify kind of target groups, create personas, create a journey map, and the engagement opportunities with the users. In the industry side, we identify trends and consumer behavior changes as well, do kind of a competitive / landscape analysis that allows for identifying partners and develop new business models. And then on the tech side, we kind of identified the direction technology wants to head, do a competitive analysis on that, see if there's any adjacent technologies, and evolve the current technologies. So we do this process almost concurrently when we run a project. And then I ask them to pitch it. So pitch it to me like if it's a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo project, or if you're pitching internally to clients or you're pitching to a VC, what does that look like? So give me a problem statement, a solution statement, and the revenue models on that. And the client brief was that clients from different industries, car, home, healthcare, approached the team, and they had to go and reinvent for a connected world hanger, make that hanger connected, digital, make the tire connected in digital, make the lowly waiting chair in a doctor's office connected in digital. So that was my quick, yes, I'm on track time-wise, talk on connected thinking. And to conclude on that and put a wrapper on it, and I'm going to go into a little bit of the micro version of the connected thinking now with the Internet of Things. I want you guys to understand connected thinking as something that we do for our clients in kind of a process methodology of really trying to understand user trends, where technology is headed, and then where industry has a shortcoming. So, and to hold all that in your head at the same time so you could actually kind of circle and hit the bullet point of what is the right solution for the clients. Questions on connected thinking? No?